there. For all I know, it's the four of us, and that works for me. Anybody else is icing on the cake. So I
There's more,
appreciate.
Alex. There's more.
I do hope that my experience can be helpful. There are some things that I really enjoy talking about and practicing and implementing in our business. Doesn't make me the end all, be all, know all about these things, but it does make me somebody that enjoys conversation about them and working to get better in them. So I appreciate that. Tabby, I appreciate that you know me well enough that I don't like to hear myself talk for too long. Like a few minutes is about it. So in order for everybody to get the most amount of value, absolutely questions are the key. I'm not afraid to wrap any mastermind up when it's winding down. So we have an hour and a half, and we'll just, we need to wind it down before then. We will, but I'm certainly here for an hour and a half if the questions are rolling and it seems valuable to everybody. So I do have, I guess, a couple maybe things to set up. As you mentioned, Tabby, when you reached out, it was like, hey, what mastermind topic makes sense? And we talked about what are agents in the office, kind of what are their frustration points? What are they hearing that they're not sure maybe how to think about or handle or say or whatever it may be? And it seemed like one of the things that you had been hearing most consistently, and you gave some examples, would be I want to wait, whether it's an agent. So like in your role, whether it's an agent or in the office, who is maybe for their own reasons putting off taking, various kinds of action and moving their business forward. But probably more relevant for this mastermind would be prospects that are buying and selling that are saying they're going to hold off to do something. So I don't know that we'll have an hour and a half to talk about that specific thing, but maybe what I think it does is it opens up for me a much broader conversation about where to start with thinking. And so I think what I'd like to start with is just going through, I had taken some notes and made really like 3 points of here's how I think, here's a beginning place where I think about these things and challenge myself. And I have to challenge myself on these things because I don't wake up like breathing and living these things. I have to go, basically it's the opposite. And so I have to remind myself of these things. And these are the things that at the end of the day, I want to practice. And when I practice them, I feel satisfied, fulfilled, proud of my business. And the other thing I would say is like, this isn't a right and wrong. This is what I believe for me, and it works for me. And when I say it works for me, when I've tried other ways, they didn't work for me. Like I didn't get the results I wanted. It didn't feel good to me. It didn't feel natural. And so some of what I will talk about today and the experiences that you'll hear from me is less like, here's the right way. And here's what I have found to be a style that I really enjoy, that I do think that anybody can adopt. But that's the choice of the individual to decide if they feel like it's fitting for them. So before I go and share these, I do want to hear, always interested to hear maybe if that sparks any questions that people have already, or things that you hope that we cover during this time, and I'll do my best to cover them if we can. So open floor if anybody has any questions. I don't know if there's a chat box, Tabby.
It is, and I'll be monitoring that, Alex, just to see. Guys, like we said, does that spark anything with you guys? Alex talked about his style and some things that maybe he has chosen to practice in his world to be successful. Are there any questions or ahas you have from that?
Haven't shared my style yet. I'll get there. There's about 3 points.
3 points.
And maybe something that will spark some kind of thought is the examples of I want to wait until would be like until the election is over, until the holidays are finished, and until the spring market happens, until prices go down. Any other objections in that vein, or any objection in general? Anybody would like to add to that? If not, we'll get rolling. We'll get rolling.
We're getting rolling, Alex. Got some quiet people on today. Until I get my house renovated. There's a new one, Alex. I won't list until I get my house renovated.
Okay. Perfect. So 3 things here. The first thing I want to start with is that, you know, when I first came to Keller after 5 years in the business, so when I hear a lot from newer agents is, what do I say? When they say this, what do I say in response? And I can give you a script, but what I'd rather do, what I do with my team and personally, is step way back and think about, how do we think about this? And then ultimately we'll get to some scripts. And I think even Tabby and I would agree that scripts are best not just memorized, but internalized. And then those of us that really enjoy what it's like to then personalize those scripts, that's when, for me, business gets really fun. So anyways, 3 points. The first one is, and these are all sort of stemming out of the belief and the value of putting people over profits, whether that's with our clients or with our team members. So the first one is be trustworthy. So we're talking about scripts, right? Like, why does it matter to be trustworthy? When I think about being trustworthy, I'm thinking about being, like, I split that up into 2 words, like trustworthy. Like, am I worth trusting? And so the question is, like, trusting for what? Like, that I won't lie to them, or I won't, like, steal from them, or I won't, you know, whatever. And it's more, am I worth them trusting that their interests are primary always and without exception? That's what I want my clients to believe. And if they don't believe that, we're not, I don't know that I'd immediately jump to we're not a good fit to work together, but I genuinely want them to go work with somebody they feel that way about. My belief is everybody deserves that kind of guide in real estate, and I want to be that to my clients. So it's be trustworthy, be worth trusting, and be worth trusting that that the prospects, the client's interests are primary always and without exception. That's the first thing under people over profits. So under each of these 3 things, I have a question, sort of a reflection opportunity for us all. And the question is being honest with myself. And this is key, right? Like, if you were just like, are you trustworthy? I'm like, yeah, of course. But in the quietness of just being alone, and I'm being honest with myself, and I ask the question, am I trustworthy in the way that I just defined? I have to consciously practice being that. And if I'm not, I can certainly fall into putting profits over people and drifting away from being focused on what I described I want to do. And so for me, that's just a good practice to reflect on that. Do my clients experience me in this way? So those are my 2 questions. Am I trustworthy in the way that I've defined? And do my clients experience me in this way? So that's where I would start when somebody says, hey, I've got this script, I've got this objection, what should I say? Like, we're going to start a long conversation that we just began. And so I'd ask them those questions. And if we feel really good about that, then I'd say, cool, let's keep talking. If not, this may be the problem. And I would say you are part of the problem. And the cool thing is that you're part of the solution. So let's dig in and be honest about it. Next thing is be empathetic. What do I mean by that? I mean, relate to what they are experiencing, relate to how they are thinking. And to me, this is the biggest one that almost underlines any objection. And that is relate to what fear may be getting in their way of pursuing what they want most. So relate to what they're experiencing, how they're thinking, and what fear may be getting in their way of pursuing what they want most. So be empathetic. not to be confused with agree with them.
Mm.
Being empathetic and being able to relate to someone's fear doesn't mean I totally agree with you. You can completely disagree with the actions that they choose to take. And yet, have we not all felt everything our clients do at some point? Sometimes it's distant past, sometimes it's recent past. So second question for reflection would be being honest with myself. Am I able to put my agenda and goals and ambitions aside at least long enough to truly listen? Am I listening? When they are talking, am I listening? Or when they're talking, am I staring at my closing tracker on my whiteboard? And that's all I can think about. So that's a reflection. Again, you know, if I am this individual who said, hey, here's my objection, what do I say? Here's a conversation. I'm saying, hey, if you're good there, let's keep going. If not, this also may be a problem that like I can work with them to unpack. All right. So the third thing is be safe. All right. Not to get too like therapy on you guys, but I ain't afraid to be therapy, the therapy real estate agent on this call. So what do I mean by be safe? Be okay with whatever the outcome is. Have good questions, be patient with responses, and be actively listening and be nurturing. So let me unpack that a little bit. This really comes from my experience as a real estate agent, my experience as a dad of 3, my experience as a husband to my wife, and my experience in a lot of therapy. Be safe. And so the example that we use on our team a lot is, again, right, to me, this is a style thing. This is totally a style thing. The example that we talk about on our team a lot is most of us that are fortunate enough to have grown up with 2 parents, a mom and a dad, one of them tends to be more critical and one of them tends to be more nurturing. And the question is, which one do you share more with? The critical one, you're going, oh, I'm good. Yeah. Da, 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 da. Thinking back on my own, my critical parent, I told like nothing. And typically the more nurturing parent, you know, like you can put it out there all on the table and you're not going to be like condemned or like beat over the head or manipulated. They're just going to be like, I hear you. I love you. I accept you where you are. How can I help you? Let's move forward together. And so that's most of us have that example that to me really illustrates the difference of what it means to be nurturing and the impact it has relationally. One of the things we talk about a lot is being relational over transactional. And I think most of us hear that and be like, yeah, of course. It's one thing to say it and agree with it. It's a totally another thing to attempt and try on a daily basis to actually practice it and put our literal money where our mouth is. And so if we are truly trying to be relational, I cannot help you if you're holding back and you have barriers up. I can't. The best thing I can do, what I need in order for me to best assist you, guide you, and help you get what you're trying to get, and as a byproduct, I profit, I need you to be honest with me. And you're not going to do that if I don't feel like I'm a safe person. If every time you're like, man, this election, and I'm just like, well, don't worry about the election. Like, real estate's always a good investment. You know, like I'm exaggerating, but if I'm always just trying to like logic, and I'm never like, man, I get you. And like most of the country is terrified right now. Like, how is that impacting your family? And what I find is that a lot of us believe that by giving attention to a quote unquote negative feeling or emotion, we're somehow going to empower it. My experience is literally the opposite happens. The power that it has over us almost diminishes and melts away. And they go, yeah, like, I don't know what you said, but like, I think I'm good now. Like, let's go buy a home. Or like, yeah, let's talk about like what needs to happen and like the market and stuff. But in that is the assumption that they actually want to buy or sell. So what we're not trying to do is create pain in somebody or create motivation in them to do something that really they don't want to do. And I'll come back to that in just a second. I want to end this third piece of being safe. So the question is being honest with myself. Am I able to detach from the outcome and be present to guide, consult, counsel this person on what's best next? And when I say counsel, I don't mean be a counselor, be a therapist. I don't need to do that. Counsel meaning, am I giving them the best? Like, am I taking a consultative approach to our conversation? If so, let's keep going. If not, that might be part of the problem. And again, we would camp out there. So those are three things that we try to practice. I try to practice on a daily basis and in literally all of my relationships, like wife, kids, friends, like, and again, like, I do it imperfectly, but if I wasn't attempting to do this and practicing that, like, it'd be really bad. Truly. So I don't have this note, but I want to circle back to the objection. When somebody says, hey, I have this objection, like they're saying this or that. Again, if I'm talking to an agent that seems to be less relational and more transactional, I have had the sense oftentimes that it's more like they're not doing what I want them to do. How do I get them to do what I want them to do? Mm-hmm. And that's the wrong question, right? So let's all just assume that like we're not trying to create pain or create motivation. What we're trying to do is somebody that does want to sell and does want to buy, and they've just got these barriers in their mind that oftentimes can be coming from this place of fear or whatever it may be. And we're going to work through that. Okay. So that's kind of the upfront basis from which we're going to have this conversation. With that, does anybody have questions, feedback, and anything you want to make sure we cover?
I'm sure they are making as many notes as I made, Alex. I did get one question in the chat, that the one where you talk about being empathetic and, you know, to what they're experiencing, really understanding that. How, as an agent who maybe hasn't done a lot of transactions, how can they practice that empathetic, I know what you're going through, when I really haven't been through it yet? I don't know if you could talk on that, and then I've got another.
Sure. So everything from here on out is off the cuff. And the thing that I think about is there's a book out there that I could reference later if somebody wanted this specific title. It escapes me right now, but at the essence of it, there's like 8 core emotions. We may describe those things in hundreds of dozens, maybe even hundreds of different ways, but at the root of it, there's 8 core emotions. And they range from, you know, fear, sadness, shame, guilt, anger, gladness, and maybe hurt. I don't know if I just got all 8 or not, but we're all human and we have all experienced those. And I personally know that I experience these like virtually on a daily basis. Again, what I mentioned about the empathy, the emotion that I included in the empathy is the fear. And so typically, you know, you and I can even role play a little bit, Tabby. Again, this is off the cuff, but let's just imagine, okay, so if you're a legitimate seller, I might ask you, let me go back to one of these objections. So spring market, you're like, hey, I'm looking to sell my home, but like, you know, I want to get it sold, but I don't know, what would you say about the spring market?
Well, Alex, I think I really want to get my home sold. I want to wait though until spring because I know that it's a better chance for me to get more money during that spring market and there'll be more people looking. So I just prefer to wait.
Okay. Um, I don't hear fear in that, or maybe I do, but it's certainly not um, the fear isn't evident yet, but I would say, hey, again, if we're role playing, let me shelf the fear for a moment. I would say, tell me a little bit more about that, Tabby. We're sitting in your home. You invited me here. It is, January 2nd. Does it make sense for us to talk about kind of what my experience has been with getting the most money and like timing and that sort of thing? Or does it even make sense for us to talk about that right now?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm most concerned about is making sure that I'm going to set myself up to get the most amount of money. And, just everything I've always read and heard, waiting until spring is the time to make sure that I do that. And I value that you've come over and shared all this information. And I know it'll help me as I move forward and prepare to get it sold in the spring.
Okay. So I think what I hear you saying is, um, you want to get the most amount of money and you're currently thinking that waiting until the spring is the way to do that.
Yeah, because I'm afraid if I put it on the market right now, it's just not that many people out there looking, and I'm not really gonna get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess I'm curious, like money aside, just imagine that it didn't matter when you sold it, whether it was January, March, or July. Money aside, like when do you want to move? Tell me more about timing and that kind of thing. Like, would you even want to move right now if you could get top dollar?
Oh, yeah. No, I would rather go ahead and get moved. As you can see, we're pretty cramped in this space that we have. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, I mean, money aside, but we know, I've got to make the most money in order to make this thing happen.
Okay. Now you sound pretty confident in this belief that the most amount of money is going to come in the spring. Um, my experience might add some to this conversation and just some things to talk about. Are you open to hearing that? Like, I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
I almost get the sense that you're like a realtor and like a real estate coach in an office. You're so confident in like this thing. And what I don't want to do is just like argue with you, but I got to tell you, based on what you're telling me with timing, I wouldn't be doing my job and giving you the best guidance possible if we don't open this conversation up and I maybe help you see some things that I've experienced that are a little bit different than what you're currently thinking. Like, can we talk about this, or are you just like, boom, spring's it?
no, I'd love to hear your experience. That'd be great. Maybe that'll
Okay.
help ease my mind.
Well, you can let me know if it eases your mind. What I can tell you is I guess a few things come to mind. Number one is that in the real estate market in Nashville since, I don't know, 2013, imagine I just told you side note, parenthesis, I just tell you a story about what I experienced in the market in 12, 13 that shifted to a seller's market. Okay, back into script. So in other markets, where literally there may be so much snow that you can literally not drive down the road, there may be times where literally things don't sell and there's a big impact on the market. But real estate is local, and Nashville doesn't get that kind of snow. And I can tell you from looking at the numbers and our own experience has been that no matter what month we sell in, we're getting top dollar. I mean, I can't tell you over the past several years how many times we have listed a home the week before Thanksgiving and closed the week after Christmas,
Mm.
right? And one thing you got to keep in mind, I know you mentioned earlier you have an economics degree from Yale, and you'll understand supply and demand. like the thing that you got to understand is that what drives prices, it's all supply and demand, meaning how many people are coming on the market, how many buyers want to buy those homes. And what we have found, and I use my hands, what we have found is that they typically fluctuate at a similar pace in our market. So when you're hearing the news and that sort of thing, right? Like, it's not that that information is wrong, it's that it's relevant for areas that don't apply here locally. And so the supply and the demand goes up and down. In the winter, yes, there's less sellers selling. And then what happens with the buyers? There's less buyers buying. And so when you say, hey, I'm going to get the most money in the spring, parentheses, I might have unpacked that a little more. Like, what leads you to believe that? Like, is it an understanding or is it just what you're hearing? Okay, back into script. So whether it's January or July or whenever it may be, in the Nashville market, I get the question all the time, and our experience, and because of these dynamics in the market, it does not matter what month you sell in as far as getting the most amount of money. What's more relevant is the timing, and that's why I wanted to know what was important to you. If you want to wait until spring to sell because of timing, that makes a lot of sense, but let's not do it because of money. What you said, though, is that timing makes sense for now. And so I guess I would just check in with you. Does that make sense? What questions do you have about that? Or is that like, no, I don't think so? Or is it like, yeah, that actually makes sense, we should talk about next steps?
Yeah, I mean, I love that you said that real estate's local. And so knowing that, based on your experience month to month, I could, make money. I definitely want to get out of the house because, again, as you can see, it's overcrammed, overpacked, and just not working for our family anymore. So no, that makes me feel a little bit better and less worried that, I'm not going to net what I need so I can move on to my next house. Yeah,
for sure. Just yesterday, we got a home under contract before it went on the market for just great terms over list price. So just again, this is happening like today. So, and then depending on so again, outside of scripting, depending on where we are in the meeting, if I'm trying to close, if we're at the end of our conversation, then I might say, do you want to talk about next steps? He goes, sure. I go, well, cool. Well, here's what I think timing wise makes sense. And then I'm going to go through the same timing as if it were any time of the year. Here's our process. Here's what's next, sign paperwork, and go from there.
I love that.
So that wasn't so much, I would say that was fear, but that's not like that wasn't an intense emotion. Mm-hmm. The fear was that if I sell now, I'm not going to get the most amount of money. Mm-hmm. And so you're alleviating that. Looks like Ashley has a question.
I have one on fear. What about like somebody, because of everything that's gone on with the pandemic and such, what about somebody worried about their job, maybe losing it soon, or it's not doing so well, like depending on what they do, and they have a fear of making any big moves?
That's good.
Thank you for that. I want to address that. I also want to ask Tabby, and maybe fill the room. Do we enjoy these sort of off the cuff role plays, or do we want to get back into more of some of the higher level, like educational stuff? Because we can do both. Lori, what do you think? You're the only other person I can see on the call.
Larry says both.
I like the role plays because it makes it like you're like, oh yeah, I get thrown that objection, and so I like those too.
Cool. All right.
Second, Lori. They're really helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Denise. Thanks, Lori. Ashley, you want to role play? No.
She's an ass. No, Alex, don't scare her.
Yeah, I'm not an agent, so.
No.
No, but you're a buyer or a seller, Ashley, and you hear it. So
yeah, I would be the agent. I was asking if you wanted to role play with the objection. You don't have to. Who else wants to volunteer?
Well, I know Tabby's very good at role playing, so
Tabby, let's role play.
Oh my goodness. Thanks.
we'll throw you under the bus.
Under the bus.
Did you pick up enough on what Ashley said?
Yes.
Here's the thing though, is like, try to think about what the objection is there. So Ashley, can you elaborate a little bit more, like what you're like, tell me a little bit more about the real scenarios that you guys are hearing.
Okay. You know, like, I mean, it could be, let me take one of these out. Somebody either is like one person of the family self-employed, and maybe their business is not doing as well, and they're worried about making any big moves, or, you know, they're kind of feeling like a little scared that their company's going to be cutting people soon, or, you know, something along those lines.
All right.
Yeah, and I think Ashley, I have heard that a lot, especially as it relates to, we could have had our pipeline filled up with clients, Alex, and we had 5 or 6 of them, and we were thinking, okay, they're ready to go. Here we go. It's going to be a great, you know, first part of the year. And now they're hearing that objection of, oh, I kind of want to pump the brakes. I'm really scared. I don't know what my financial situation is going to be. I don't know how long this COVID thing is going to last. And I just don't know that now's the right time because, man, all this other stuff is going on. So sorry, I said I wanted to buy or sell in the fall, but I don't mean it right now.
Yeah.
People can definitely change their minds. Life happens, things change for sure. I always, again, what I'm not trying to do is take somebody whose motivation has truly changed. I don't have any interest in trying to get somebody to do something that they don't want to do, or that I don't have the conviction is actually a good plan for them. It's not like there's only one plan that we can execute here, but I'll give you a scenario where maybe I would leave it alone. If somebody said, let's say it was a seller and a buyer, and they're like, hey, we want to do something after the first of the year, you know, and here we are in January, and it's like, man, this COVID thing, like my job security, I don't think I want to do anything. Well, I don't have enough information to give them any guidance at that point. So I want to go back to my 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
Are they experiencing me as trustworthy? If they're not, I'm probably not going to get enough information. Or if I'm talking, they ain't listening. They're just gonna be like, yeah, I totally right, but we're still going to do this. Well, that's not the type of relationship that I want. That's not the kind of dialogue. So are they experiencing me as trustworthy? Do I have empathy? Am I a safe person? If I am, then they're probably, you know, again, this is an example that I'd probably leave alone. If they said, hey, look, we're in a house. Our plan was to sell, rent for a while until we find the right place. The truth is, my company is not doing well. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my job in the next 30 days. And my fear is that I'm going to find myself having sold the home that I enjoy, hoping to get a better one, but actually being unemployed and not able to get a loan. If somebody told me that, I'd be like, yeah, don't move. Like, dude, that would be like, so who am I to say whether their emotions are legitimate?
That's good.
But I look at that situation, I go, that seems like I follow that logic. So let's go to one where, like, I'd literally just had this conversation this week. Guys like, man, we're wanting to buy, but we're probably going to hold off a year. Like, we're just not seeing a lot. We're probably going to hold off a year. He wouldn't move in the next 30 days anyways, but I do get the sense in just like, this wasn't a prospect. We were sitting down. He and I were in, I'm actually a patient of his. So it wasn't like a professional setting where it was like, hey, let's have a real estate conversation. But it was, so he wouldn't move the next 30 days if he found the right home. He's not ready yet, but he would like to do something soon. And just with everything, he was like, I think we're going to hold off a year. And so I mean, the conversation sounded like, man, I get that. Like one of the things you might want to think about, and like I know, like this guy and I have very, very open dialogue back and forth about like tons of stuff. So with him, it's like, man, one of the things you want to think about, like, because he's like, we're looking at this price point and like, we're just not seeing a lot that we like at that price point. And so for me, like, if he really wants to move, something's got to change. Either his expectations or his budget, one of the two. He's got to spend more money, or he's got to accept what his price gets him. So I'm going, man, one of the things you want to think about is if the market keeps going in the direction that you think it is, typically what happens in a market is interest rates will go up. Like nationwide, on average, interest rates go up. Buyer demand is impacted, is less. And ultimately, prices either stop appreciating at such a fast rate, and depending on what the market is, it might even start like fizzling out, stagnating, and even prices go down. The thing that my belief is that what's unique about Nashville, the Southeast in general, with as many people relocating here, and Nashville in particular, with as many people relocating here, I expect what's going to happen is that interest rates go up. And so let's say they go from 3% to 4% on a primary, like give or take. If they go from 3 to 4, interest rates are going up, but what's not happening is that direct impact on the market as much in Nashville as would be like a national average. And so because of so many people moving here, the demand is continuing to go up relative to supply. I don't just mean people are moving here. I mean, relative to the supply, the tightness of inventory. And so what happens is not only do interest rates go up, but prices are going up. So what does that mean for you? For every 1% difference in interest rate, it impacts your buying power by about 10%. So like, let's just say he's looking for 500. So like right now you're looking at 500 and you're not seeing anything. If interest rates go from 3 to 4, like your same payment only gets you a 450, and that 500 isn't 500 anymore, it's 525. And he was like, oh. And again, so going back to pain, right? Like if he loves his home, he's probably going to hear that and he's going to get clarity and he's going to go, I'm just like, my house is great. I'm just going to stay here. But that's not where the conversation began. The conversation was, I've got 2 kids. One of them's 4 months old. We have 1,600 square feet. We're killing each other. So now he has, like, I've heard him out. I'm tracking with you. I've been there. So I literally have been there, like kids with 1,600 square feet. But even if I hadn't, like, we've all been quarantined. Like we've all been in less space right now than we want to. And what do we want to do? Like, I had hair before the pandemic. Okay. I pulled it out. And everybody is feeling that way, right? Like, maybe not everybody, but there's a lot of us that are just like, ah. So I can empathize with him. He's sharing with me. Now I've given him this really solid logic where he's going to go back and he's going to come back to me in a week or two and be like, yeah, man, at dinner the other night, I was talking with my wife and like, you know, I think we can make 600 work. Like that's typically what's going to happen. Does that make sense?
I love that story because I think that's a very valid conversation and story that we're hearing on the, I'll wait until next year, right? Like, so I appreciate it. And Ashley says that got hers answered. Alex, there's one in here about until I get my house renovated. Like I'm not going to list until I get the house renovated. Does that fall into that being safe, being okay with the outcome, or letting them do what they feel like they need to do? Or does that fall in one of your other categories?
Again, I'm happy to role play off the cuff
Okay.
on this specific issue. I think what I would say about that would be, yeah, I would just want to hear more. Like with everything, it depends. Like, let me hear more. So I think that you, Lori?
Lori, so she'll
Yeah,
role
yeah.
play with you, Alex.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
Let's off the cuff role play this thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. So
So
Lori, tell me what's going on.
yeah, so our house, we haven't renovated it in 20 years. And I know to get top dollar, we're going to put new floors and paint, and our deck is falling apart. And I am not interested in selling this as is, because to get what I want in Lebanon, I've looked at the prices and I am going to have to get the maximum money out of this place. So, so I'm not going to be ready. Like, I'm so overwhelmed with calling all these vendors and everything. And, this may take me 6 months to get my house ready.
Mhm.
So I gotta get everything together first, Lori, or Alex.
Okay. I hear you. So what I would want to dig in before we're having like specific conversations, like I'd say, again, part of these role plays is like we don't have context. Like, did she just call me and that's the first thing she said? Or are we like sitting in her home and we've been hanging out for 45 minutes talking about the market and talking about the process? So it's always a little bit difficult without context. But what I would want to hear more about is like, so when you look at the specific numbers for what you need to buy, like tell me what you're seeing. Like specifically, as specific as you can be, what do you need out of the home? What is the down payment needed? Because that's really the question we're trying to answer. And maybe one question I would ask you is like, is that really what we're trying to do? Like, there's the trying to get the most out of the home, and then there's on a practical level, like I'm just trying to get to the next house. Like, are both of those things important to you? Or if you could avoid the work and get into the next house, is that what you would prefer, and just like bypass the headache of being a general contractor for 6 months?
Well, I have looked at the pictures of some of the houses that are comparable to what if I do not do the upgrades, and I did like the numbers people are getting, it's just too low. Like I don't want to, I'm comfortable living here. I don't have to move. I would like to move. And I see the prices in Lebanon. I mean, I'm probably just going to make an even trade with a house in Lebanon. So if I sell this for 350, I'm probably buying something in Lebanon for 350 where I just have a little bit more space. So that is my dilemma, because I don't want to sell my house for 300. I won't be able to get what I want in Lebanon for 350 because I owe too much on this house. I don't owe it free and clear.
All right. Have we looked at how much you would net on this and what my opinion is on value? So this is sort of aside, this is context, right? Like parenthesis. Have we had a conversation about what you would net on the home?
Yes.
So if based on the information I'm getting, you can't buy that house, that answers the question. Unless I'm going to give you a free loan or something, like to me, that answers the question. And so I go, do I need business in 6 months? I'd love to have business in 6 months. So now I'm going to take the approach of, I get it. So the other thing too is like, do I believe as the agent that this person has the resources to make that transformation happen? And after that transformation happens, do I believe that they will then have the resources to buy the next home? I mean, that's I don't hear that. I don't know that I've ever been in a situation where somebody is depending on basically flipping their own home in order to buy the next home. But if I did, that's how I would approach it. It would be like, well, it's not whether you want to or not. Even if you wanted to, you don't have the money to, so you need to basically flip your own home. Now I know what role I'm playing now and moving forward, and that is to give you the best guidance I can on how to spend that money, where to spend that money, and I'm going to be selling it in 6 months, and then we'll get you into another house.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Disagree? What are your thoughts?
Well, and this client, because I went to her house and I said, well, before you jump in the deep end of the renovation pool, can I come see your house? Because I will be able to at least tell you what I think, because I work with buyers all the time, and some of this they might just get over, because you're not going to be pricing your house at the top of what, you possibly could get. So she agreed. I went over, and it does need to be renovated. It's cat carpet everywhere. So I know the smell will turn somebody off, just like, those walk in and go, I'm out. So unfortunately, she really does need to switch some stuff out. But I was like, and then I just started offering her vendor ideas and saying, well, let's just do the most important stuff, and let's get the flooring and the paint job, and maybe the deck can wait. And I said, and if you're willing to let me market this off market, because the market is so hot, we might find somebody who just wants to make a preemptive bid, and you're not going to need to do all those other things. It's going to take another 2 or 3 months. Because as every month we wait to sell your house, because she's like, well, what's the downside in waiting? The prices keep going up. And I'm like, yes, but they keep going up on the other side too. So it's not like Lebanon's getting cheaper while Old Hickory is getting more expensive. They're all getting more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's well handled.
Well,
that's my opinion, but I think that's well handled. I mean, I don't know what else you do. And I think that's great that you're like, hey, let's begin doing this process. And in the meantime, I'm going to go the coming soon route.
Well, she won't let me do that part. She's just like, no, it's not, and unfortunately they've had a lot of delays on just supplier stuff. So she still doesn't have things done, and
so if somebody didn't want me to do that, to me, that's like, I'm hearing them not follow what I think is best. And I'm going to go the opposite direction and say, I mean, what's even stopping you from just doing a knockout renovation and just staying here? Like, why wouldn't you do that? Because that would make sense to me. A lot of people would do that. Why wouldn't you? I want to hear the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't want to be in this house anymore. I'm just kind of, we've lived in this house and we're not interested in being in this neighborhood anymore. We want a new, fresh start somewhere else.
I gotcha. I hear you. Okay. Well, I just wanted to kind of get clarity on that. I guess maybe I'm just kind of, I don't know, confused a little bit, because I think the coming soon could actually help us do what you just described. So I'm wondering, maybe, is there another reason you don't want to do that? Like what,
well,
tell me more about that.
Well, I might have to tell my son he's got to go find a new place to live, because he works near our house. So it's convenient for him, and he's living in the basement. And so all of this is going to uproot him too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you need to hire another professional for that. So, like, if that's what you said, guess what? Like, we got more to talk about now. And if you had not told me that, a lot of our dialogues come from a place that if I don't personally get to a place where I discover that, the whole situation doesn't make sense. And I'm going to go and like bang my head on the wall of like, this makes no sense to me. And so, I can detach from the outcome, and we can totally disagree on the plan, but like, I want your plan to make sense and to not be like in conflict with other things that you're telling me. Like, that doesn't make sense. So again, just sharing style, Tabby, for what it's worth for our participants here.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, to me, that's where it fits into it, right? Like, and how you would go about handling it. Like, again, and what I love about you, Alex, and how you built your team and your business, again, you talk about the whole relationship versus transaction. And in all the role plays in your responses, it's always tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And I do know that that's a skill. Like, it's not just something you do. It's a skill to really be patient enough to sit there and tell me more, dig a little bit more, because I think a lot of us do get nervous as agents and we want to jump to the answers and fix things, right? And so
Which is great.
I appreciate that about your style. Tell me more.
Yeah, thank you. It does take practice. Again, for those that are like newer and maybe listening, like it is a skill, because I will lose if I am rusty. I won't ask those questions, and I'll find myself sort of mid appointment going, all right, I need to like breathe and reset and like check myself, and then enter back in and be like, man, I just have a couple of questions. Like, can you give me like some context for this, or tell me more about that? Or like, I'm having a hard time understanding how these pieces fit together. Can you explain that more? And, when I first got into real estate, I made the mistake, and still do from time to time, of believing that I'm supposed to have all the answers, and that I'm like not supposed to like struggle with understanding things or whatever. And the more you can just let all that go and just have a conversation, I find, again, like letting all that go works for me relationally, results, fulfillment. So we're at 125. How are we doing? What have we not talked about that we need to?
Denise had a question just about experiencing folks who want to list, and instead they're going with wholesalers or the flat fee companies like Mark Spain. Like, how do we, when they say, no, I'll just talk to somebody who's going to make an offer, or I'll wait and I'll do a flat fee company, I don't need all your services, it's a super hot market. How are you overcoming that with your team?
So again, context is everything, right? Like, I don't find myself in an appointment. And I wouldn't say that our team has never been in this situation. We probably have, but it's not common at all, if it happens, for us to be sitting with a homeowner, and the homeowner is thinking, I'm interviewing you guys and I'm interviewing Mark Spain. I'm interviewing you guys, or I'm talking to a wholesaler. Like, that doesn't happen for us. Now it might be, hey, like, I'm interested in your services, and like, I've got a friend, or I've got something that the commission would be less. That's not uncommon. But the all or nothing, like, I'm going to wholesale or I'm going to go full service, I don't see that a lot. Not to say Denise isn't in that all the time, but again, context for me is important. For us, the upfront, we have what we call seller discovery questions that, like, Tabby, if you called and you're like, hey man, heard you're the dude to call if I want to sell, I'm available this afternoon, can we hop on a call for a few minutes? And then I've got these questions that I'm going to work through, And part of that is I'm asking about, are you interviewing other agents? How'd you hear about us? That sort of thing. So before I get to the point of like actually talking about it, before we're ever sitting down and have that conversation, I'm asking what I already know what they're thinking. And the reason for me why that's so important is because if they're like, no, Bob said call you, I'm not talking to anybody else. I don't want to waste any energy preparing to have a competitive situation conversation. Like, I'll be prepared for it if it comes up, but I don't want to spend energy on that. I can totally focus on the relationship at that point rather than like selling and competing for the business. But for the person that's like, yeah, I'm interviewing 3 agents. Okay, so now that's kind of what we're talking more about. And that's not an uncommon situation for us, where people are meeting with other agents. And for me, why are they meeting with other agents? Like, in this question about the basically it's the net. Like if I'm talking to wholesaler, Mark, the iBuyer versus a full service, at the end of the day, we're talking about, that's a money question.
Mhm.
For some people, it's different. It's not the money, it's the fit, or it's the process, or it's the service. And asking those questions up front can help me prepare for that. But at the end of the day, for all of those things, it's tell me more. Like, I'm looking for this kind of agent. Well, I want to hear more. And really what I'm looking for is, like we talk about just this idea of match selling. And that is like, if you said, Alex, tell me about your team. Like, it's Thursday afternoon. I could talk until next Thursday afternoon. I don't know if I'll say anything that actually resonates with you. So what I want to know is, like, I appreciate you asking. I'd love to tell you about my team. Specifically, what would you like to hear? Like, what are some of the things that you want me to highlight? And you're like, well, tell me about like communication. Like, agent communication sucks. And like, talk to me about commissions, because like agents aren't worth a full commission. I'm looking for somebody that can do it for 4%. And like, talk to me, like whatever it is. Well, now I know like your hot buttons. I know what's important to you. I know the things that if we can overcome, everything else is going to be easy. So in our conversation, I'm going to focus on those things. And if it's commission, again, right, if they're experiencing me as trustworthy, empathetic, and safe, even if it doesn't matter the personality, right? We don't have to have this like super, doesn't have to be some like kumbaya moment where like the butterflies are flying around us or anything like that. But are there barriers up? Are there barriers up, or am I asking good questions and listening so that they're actually sharing the truth with me? And so if it's the commission thing, again, like, let's talk about a scenario that if this was the case, I'd probably leave it alone. If it's like, I can sell your home at 300 for a full commission and you net this, and you have a wholesaler offering you 300, like, you should take that deal. And that's the part of the being detached from the outcome. If I, again, this is a style, this is a belief, this is not a right or wrong, but if I personally run my life and run my business trying to convince everybody that I'm the best option no matter the circumstance, I'm going to be taking heartburn pills like they're going out of style. I just don't want to do that. Like,
You'd have less hair.
I'd have even less hair. I got some on the side. Come on now. But I'm going to be taking heartburn medication. And what I would rather do is let that go and focus on the right prospects, people that love paying a full commission because they love the services that we offer. I think there is some middle ground where people may not be, and this is where the asking what's important to them, there is the middle ground. Maybe they had an agent in the distant past that did discount their commission a little bit, and they really love the services we provide. Now it's more of an educating, and then it's my job at that point to show them the value that they actually want to see. But it's not me trying to convince them that they want something that they ain't buying.
Right.
Like, it makes me think of the idea that like nobody wants to be sold and all of us love to buy. So I'm going to help them buy something. I'm going to help them buy me. I'm going to help them buy our services, but I ain't trying to sell them anything because nobody likes that. Does that make sense?
That's where I was going, Alex. That was great. Sometimes it starts with the wholesaler coming in, and then that doesn't work out. So they hand it over to their agent who comes in and does the, we'll do it for 4% commission thing. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I think you just brought up a really good point, Denise, and that is something I didn't talk anything about, but as the conversation winds down, certainly it makes sense to say, with your permission, I'd love to check back in with you and fill in the blank time frame to see if that worked out with you or not, and whether or not I might be able to be a good resource for you at that point. That okay? And they go, yeah. And then some people are going to call and the home sold, and others go, man, I was praying about this yesterday and I can't believe you just called.
Mhm.
It's like, all right, cool.
Love that. What other questions do you guys have for Alex? Got a couple more that were sent in, but those on the line I want to get. One, Alex, was around it sounds like you're very knowledgeable of the market. Of course, you've been in real estate business for what, going on now, 15 years?
Something like that, somewhere between 10 and 15.
Somewhere
When I
between
hit,
there?
yeah, I think 13, 14.
Yeah. So from an investment perspective, where are you telling your clients who are looking for investments to pay attention to?
I hate working with investors. I don't work with them. I don't tell them anything.
Where are you investing, Alex? Tell us about you. Where are you investing?
I do want to answer the question though.
Yeah.
I don't have a specific, I mean, like straight up, somebody comes to me, like if somebody came to me, a Sphere person, and they're like, man, I want to rent. I'm going to be like, you need to talk to these people on our team. Like, that's not going to be my immediate response, but ultimately I'm going to say, well, here's how our team works, and my team and I do this, and we kind of have these different, like my bread and butter. Like, I love working with families like mine that are buying and selling. I love it. I love the headache of it, all of it. Investors, I'm like, I don't enjoy that myself, and so I'm not going to enjoy trying to help you do that. There are people on our team though that do and are good at it. That is the solution. So I'd say the best thing I can do for you, I could give you some thoughts, but what I think you're going to get the most value of is let me connect you to this person who can educate you on the various areas and kind of what they're seeing and what's going on. And whether you work with our team or not, I think you're going to find that conversation really helpful to you in your process.
I love that though. I love that you are like a top group and you're like, I don't like investors. You know, like you don't, everything is not for everybody. And I do often know that some of us get sidetracked with thinking we have to service every facet of every real estate transaction.
Yeah. And like that has taken me time to accept and admit and be okay with. And there's a part of me that wishes I enjoyed it more, because I would probably be better off financially, personally, if I did. But I don't, and I'm content and I'm happy. So we're good. As far as investments go, man, the 2020, the beginning of 2020 was the first time I did any kind of real estate, like real real estate investment. Obviously, been a homeowner. We do have a rental property, but that was more of sort of a package deal tied to some land that we needed to build on. And we still have that, and that's been fine, but that hasn't been, I have money set aside, designated to turn into some kind of either passive income or big hit income, and I'm gonna, go pursue that. I did begin that in early 2020 in just being an investor on new builds in various parts of town. And I went from a place of just being totally, not totally, but being unfamiliar enough with it that I wasn't comfortable investing in that, to now I'm like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Like, worst case scenario, this isn't my advice to other people, this is for me and just the way I think about it, is that if the numbers make sense as an investment, historically, like looking at historical 12 to 24 month worst case scenario in Nashville, if that happened again during this process, worst case is I break even.
Oh.
Like worst case scenario. But that is not my forte. There's plenty of other people in our office that could speak much more helpfully and authoritatively on that. But I enjoy talking about it because, I mean, you could just back up all the way to, I mean, you know, I'm in real estate for 5 years, don't really have a clue what's going on. Joined Keller, literally changes my life. And then fast forward all the way to, I have the type of relationships that like investments can replace like half to 100% of my income over the next like year and moving forward. Like that is mind blowing to me. And it's because I'm around people that we all want each other to succeed. And we're willing to share relationships and point people in the right direction and be a resource. I can't see who was on the call, but you know, I had a call earlier this week, like somebody that's, and I'm talking about on the team, off the team, just Keller in general. Culture is I'm just an advocate of the culture of Keller, you know, that has, I've just been fortunate to experience a lot of fruit of the Keller culture and really grateful for that.
I loved it what you said though, like 5 years, you joined Keller, you're at 10-year mark now, right? Like somewhere in there.
With Keller?
With Keller.
Yeah, like 8, 9, 10, yeah.
And then just the difference between that first 5 years and the last 8 years, and now looking at the next 5 years, Alex.
Yeah.
That all of that work and that fruit and the things that you work so hard on, that you can replace that with passive income. Like you're right, that's mind blowing to think that in this 15 to 20 year plan, your whole being could change in this real estate world. So
yeah,
this gave me a little tickle there at the, you know, like, wow, that's a cool way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
One other question that I wanted to ask you about, I see Lori popped another one in there, is just around building your team. We have some folks who are on here and they are going through the pain of hiring that first admin or potentially that director of ops, or they're looking at hiring a listing and a lead. They're looking at hiring a second admin. There's Sam. Do you have just or maybe Sam, this is where he talks, that a general sense of encouragement or how to go through that process and not come out negatively, I guess, on the other side?
So going back to the empathy piece, like I've been there, I know what that's like. I have felt that. And that's not to say that I'm not feeling that right now, because we may be, I may have been on this journey a little longer and down the road, but to some extent, we're sort of all on this same path. And I'm still like, we're in the middle right now looking at marketing candidates. Like our biggest, maybe not, I don't want to say biggest, but a big opportunity for us growth wise is having somebody that can really excel in marketing, branding, messaging, etc. Like we're okay in that. We've grown a lot, but I think that's a really big opportunity for us. And like we hire somebody and they're there for 6 months and it doesn't work out. And so I know what that is like when it comes to the frustration and the feeling like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and that sort of thing. And for me, one of the things that I've really had to learn, and that I think that I enjoy, is that marketing person or no marketing person, I have a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment and contentment. And I know it's a process, and I know it's messy, and I know there's going to be days where I'm like, this freaking sucks. Like February is a rockin' month. I'm probably going to retire March 1. Like, screw this. Like, I just know that's a part of the process, and that's a part of the process that I consciously and like happily opt into. I love the process. I embrace it. I'm willing to die on my own sword. I don't care what the results are. Like, I'm in it to go through the process and to personally grow and learn. And so for me, it can, like, it's really easy to look back on the last 8, 9, 10 years, whatever, with Keller and be like, and to think that like, I had all that planned out and I just like followed the model and I executed and I was just like, let's go. And the truth is like, we're so much beyond where I realistically thought we would ever be. Realistically, I can dream it, but like realistically and then here we are. And so, okay, cool. So what is the next 5 to 10 years? Well, I'm feeling the same as this person that's like day one. Because it's like, dude, the truth is there's so much out of my control. I don't have a clue really what the next 10 years is going to look like. I can tell you what I want it to look like. I can show you an org chart for what 3 to 5 years looks like, and it's a rocket and it's a great business and we're doing all this good. But I don't really know. And there's so much out of my control that it's like, I feel the same way you do. And so for me, part of it is, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going in that direction. It's going to be a process. Things are not going to work out the way we want them to, but a lot of things are going to work really well. And for me, a quote from Teddy Roosevelt that I heard in 2020, early in the pandemic, that I found really helpful for me. It's a Teddy Roosevelt quote. It came through a webinar that Adam Hergenrother, is that his name? Adam Hergenrother had. I felt maybe not paralyzed, but really unsure and uncertain of how to go. I was going through a process of figuring out what to do and how to do things and how to begin just moving the wheels forward. And so Teddy Roosevelt is, hang on, I got it on my whiteboard right here.
Oh.
One second. Can you hear me, Tabby?
I can.
All right. So it says, in any moment of decision, which if you're building a team, you have decisions to make all the time. As an agent, as a non-team, you do. But and especially if you're building, you have, who do I hire? How do I manage? How do I do this? What do I do? In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing. And so when I heard that, it freed me to go, oh yeah, like we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make bad hires. And that is for me, like, that's not, I'm doing business wrong. It's that literally, and everybody I talk to that runs a business, like this is a part of the process.
I love that. Any thoughts on that or questions for Alex since he's been through that messy process?
I'm in that messy process.
Always in that messy process, right? And I love that you say, we might look at you and your team and to me, your marketing, and we're like, man, we hold you up as one of the best, right? Like Sam teaches us about farming and the materials that you guys put out. And so I find it refreshing to hear you say, we've got a long way to go in that area. And yet, we see you as like, wow, one of the best out there on that. So thank you.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm grateful for your words. That's very kind.
It's
I
true.
appreciate it.
I'm sure a lot of folks on this call would say the same thing. So I appreciate your honesty there around that. Lori, anything else? Kim?
I just pulled that quote up so that I could have it, that Teddy Roosevelt quote, because I love it.
Wasn't that great, Ashley?
Yeah.
The right thing, the wrong thing, or nothing at all. Love that.
Oh, I wanted to go back to one of the comments you had, Alex, about like, hey, those are probably not my people. Because I'm trying to, especially when you're new at it, you're trying to, you're afraid to let anything go, and you're holding on to things where you're like, why am I driving to Chapel Hill when I live near downtown Nashville? Where they told you, I know exactly what house I want. You're just only going to have to let me in this one house. And, 10 houses later in Chapel Hill, now you know all the places to eat in Chapel Hill. So are there some basic questions that are for you? Like when somebody refers someone to you, it's a cold call, whatever. And you're just sort of like, they're not in your sphere. You're trying to suss them out to be like, are these really going to be my people? Are there just some like questions that you're like, if you hear the following answers to these, you might really give it pause and go, is this really going to be your person? Because I think for me, I was like, I like to be the person who was bird dogging the lot for the builder and all that. And, you know, it was a lot of grunt work. And now when I hear, and now that I've been burned by a couple of these builders that I did a tremendous amount of work for, and, you know, sometimes you get paid and sometimes you don't. So now I was like, you know, Tabby heard me one day, I was like, I'm not doing lots anymore. That just seemed to be a waste of my time, you know, and I feel the gravitational pull back into it. Like even today where I had 3 people calling me like, Lori, know any lots, you know? And I know I need to be like, shut it down. Lots are not my business. You know, if one falls in my lap, I know who to call. But when I hear those people, they're like, I'm looking for a deal. That to me is my own personal red flag, because like we all know there really are hardly any deals to be had. I'm like, is this my person who wants a deal? Because they're going to lowball. They're going to probably not appreciate the amount of energy I'm going to put into delivering a deal that I think is a deal. You know, what is it for you?
You're on mute.
Thanks, Tabby. There's several things to unpack there. One is you've got a couple of different buyers there. One is buying as an investor. The other is, let's just pretend that's a traditional buyer, somebody just buying a primary residence. I love what you said. When I hear I'm looking for a deal, it's like, I ain't looking to work with somebody that wants a deal. And so I think with that, like, have your own boundaries. So maybe have some questions like, when you say you're looking for a deal, tell me specifically what kind of rate of return are you looking for? What's your time frame? When was the last deal? When was the last time you got a deal? And it's like, well, 2008. It's like, cool. Well, let me introduce you to the agent I like least.
What I said.
You know, but that's what I would ask about there, as far as the same thing with the investment. Like, only experience can teach you that you don't want to work with that kind. And then you got to go, okay, what do I need? Okay, what boundaries do I want to put in place? What questions do I need to ask that will help me keep those boundaries? And my boundary is, I'm not going to work with somebody that wants a deal and just start working with them. I need to know specifics, then I'll make a decision. But certainly my default isn't just to move forward and work with them as a client. So that would just be a little bit of feedback on that. Feel free to follow up on that if you want to, but jumping over to the traditional buyer, first question would be leverage. Do you have leverage that if you knew for sure you wouldn't, that for whatever reason, that you're not going to work with them, do you have the leverage piece to make that introduction and have the confidence that it's going to go well, at least not perfectly for sure, but like it's going to go well? That's my first question. If the answer is no, then whether you want them or not, like, if they're a good enough client, then I would say go ahead and take them and work on the leverage piece. If you have the leverage piece, the other thing I would say would be, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. In other words, you don't have to decide on that call whether you're going to work with them until, you know, the end, or to give them. I've had plenty of experiences, and I always think back to when I first hired a showing specialist. When I first hired somebody to help me with showings, I was working with a handful of buyers. And so I was midstream, and the conversation was basically, can we talk about, you know, I don't remember exactly, but, you know, I guess I don't feel the need to like role play that conversation, but in essence, I got their permission to work with this other person because where I was in my business, I thought this structure helped them best get what they wanted. And literally everybody was like, I'm so happy for you. That's awesome. Let's go. So that worked really well. And what I find in my business now is that from time to time, I will take on people, you know, it's like, hey, let me see this house. And I'm cool, like 650, one showing, let's go. And then I'm like, dang it, like you didn't like that one. And it might be like, you know what? And then it's the same conversation as I had years ago, which is, I want to share some thoughts with you. I want to make a recommendation and get your feedback on. Obviously, this is something you need to be comfortable with. And when my experience, that approach, when I take that with people, like I've literally never had anybody less than like, yeah, that's great. just tell me what to do next. Tabby, you got some feedback on this?
No, I think you probably shared with Lori what she's learning, right? And again, that's a learning process. Like we say, know who you are and know who your people are.
Yeah.
And the more you can pour into those relationships, the better your business is going to be. And Alex, I love what you said earlier. The more fulfilled you're going to be as an agent, right? Like this business isn't about just money and all that. It's about, am I fulfilled as a person, and am I doing good things for my family and my community and all that? And working with people who suck us dry is not the way for us to be fulfilled.
Yeah, well said. Lori, is that helpful? Do you have any follow-up questions on those two scenarios?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think for me, and to your point, when people say I'm looking for a deal, and I kind of like go, okay, well, what stats are you looking at that I don't have? I'm just like, well, where do you consider a deal? Like, how much work are you willing to do to get that deal? And I'm like, or I'll say, oh, that's great. So we're just going to look at houses that have been on the market for 100 days plus. And they'll be like, no, aren't those the bad ones that nobody wants? I'm like, exactly. That's where the deal lies.
That's where the deal lies. Yep.
So sometimes they'll talk themselves out of the deal. They're like, well, I guess what I'm saying is I just really want to pay a fair price, I'm like, okay, well, absolutely, but yeah, I have let some people really run me ragged, and I get mad at myself. I'm like, I let them do that to me because I wanted to either please them, prove to myself I could pull off the miracle, whatever it was. Yep. So I realized there was a lot of like wacko ego into it too.
Yep.
That I just had to go, I'm not the right fit for this, because yeah.
Me too. Been there.
Alex,
we're winding down, Tabby.
That's
got
all
5 minutes.
I don't see any more questions or messages that I have, unless somebody else on the phone has something they've missed or would like to share. Has this been helpful for those who have been on? I know Alex can only see like 3 of you, but there's some other.
Me, Lori, Ashley, and Tabby.
Oh, we're the new clubhouse. They're listening. They're just not seeing us, Alex. So
I see.
We're the people that put makeup on. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Everybody else has pajamas on.
Yeah.
Tabby knows who you are.
I could tell you the list. Yes. Hey, that's okay. I got stretchy pants on the bottom. So anyway.
There you go.
Yeah. So lots of great information. Thank you for your time, Alex. I always value your time. I've got a couple of messages that said they appreciate your honesty and your authenticity. Can we have him back? Yes, we can have him back if you bring more questions. That's the parameter for that. So
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex.
You're welcome, Ashley. Appreciate your contribution. You too, Lori. Tabby, thanks for hosting. Appreciate the opportunity to share.
Yeah. Larry learned a lot. So that's awesome. We got some good folks on today. So thank you,
Cool.
Alex, for helping them on their journey.
You bet.
Go make it a
See
great
y'all.
day.
You too. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.